integral. You have to get this win as Free Marsy, really, if you're going to have any chance in this. So, Nagura, Kalaris, take it away.
Thank you very much. Time to get into Dark Heart Thicket once again for our final time, actually, of our first round. Nagura, excited for this one.
Definitely, and especially interesting to see those double rogues, because we saw earlier already how impactful the rogues are in this dungeon, and they have double rogues. So that means they actually have double shroud, which might be like very interesting later on. So we see a interesting pull here coming out of Free Marsy. They actually pull the birds with the bear that we haven't seen before at all.
Yeah, the cats as well. Normally people kind of stray away from the idea of those at the very beginning of this, but I like what you bring up about the double rogues, because I feel like with those double shrouds, they could be a bit more selective about how much and where they want to do their trash moving forward. So obviously other situations you like maybe have to send someone off and die if you don't want to do a trash pack, or you have to pop an invis potion or anything. So this could work out. It'd be very interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, we also saw this pull working out for them. I just saw because they only have one ranged player, which is the healer, Subs, on the Rasta Druid. So we saw the cats only jumping on him. And of course, he has the bear form and a lot of armor. So he actually managed to survive those jumps, even though they were bolstered. So that's their strategy coming in, just having this one range dealing with the cat jumps here.
All right, so Free Marsy just taking that left-hand side pack as well. Want to get as much percent as possible. No doubt they're probably going to end up skipping those bears. And like we see on the other side of Mythic Pogchamp, they have skipped the majority of that pack, though, there. So they're going to maybe... Will they go to the lashes? Because we've seen quite a lot of that, and it looks like they're repositioning for it.
Definitely, yeah. So they probably, I think Masselbra is going to go through and pull those lashes. The problem is they do have this Fire Mage, right? And it is bolstering. Fire Mage does have a lot of passive cleave, which you don't want really, right? Especially if it's bolstering, because if they die too fast, they bolster their boss. And not only that, they also remove damage gain for the rogue, for example. But we see them pull the pack anyway, so the mage probably has to be careful a little bit so they don't die too early.
Yeah, that is one of the concerns, especially when we were speaking to them about it. But it's nice to see that they've actually gone with it. They could potentially flex over to, say, Windwalker Monks perhaps down the line, but we'll have to see as the tournament plays out. So just taking on this boss at the moment, the Archdruid, they generally just want to be able to dodge out those charges, very important. The jump over to usually the healer can be soaked up pretty nicely by Druid, by, you know, Guardian Bear, so that's not too bad either.
Yeah, definitely. We see Elsaret standing outside, going bear form, of course. We saw some other teams having a ranged DPS take the jump instead of the healer, so you could actually go in melee and do damage, but those were Holy Paladins, and of course Rasta Druids can also do damage while they are at range. So we see both Rasta Druids just taking the jump, going in bear form, healing it up with Frenzied Regeneration. But one interesting thing to note is that Free Marsy did not actually use their Bloodlust for this boss. So I assume they're actually having a very different strat compared to all the other teams that we have seen so far. Also, Method Pogchamp is playing really similar to some teams that we've seen before, but Free Marsy probably has planned some very big pull afterwards if they're saving this Bloodlust.
Right, yeah, exactly. This is what I was hoping to see with the warrior choice, maybe down in the back with all of those lashes, and we'll see if that comes to fruition. But of course, you do want to pop your Bloodlust kind of early on in this dungeon, because then you want it towards the end. We've seen the times, kind of how they line up, etc., and you can fit in 2 Bloodlusts pretty easy as long as you're using it in the first 5-6 minutes or so of the dungeon.
Okay, so we see something very interesting coming out of Method Pogchamp here. So they pulled the left pack with the Keepers, which usually you try to avoid the Keepers as they're healing the flowers. And of course, it's also bolstering, so they will bolster and be on full HP. But we saw them pull it on the left side, and then Seps actually just kept pulling while the rest of the team was killing the pack in the back. So now we're doing the same pull that we saw earlier as well, where they pull the flowers from the back side here, and you just go to the specific spot where all the flowers just teleport together, and now they're trying to, of course, kill everything evenly and try to not get the Sanguine early so they don't heal.
Yeah, it's a big group at the moment, and Dr. J is trying to pump out as much damage as possible, probably lined up a lot of his cooldowns, especially with Combustion being like one of the strongest burst CDs in the game. You can really start ramping up the damage, and you're seeing that on the side of Dr. J at the moment. Meanwhile, Free Marsy is sneaking around. I'm wondering how they're going to do this. I'm still very intrigued to see where they're going to use that Bloodlust.
Yeah, I'm actually very excited to see what is going on here. They're probably just waiting for maybe some patrols to get ready, and there's this guy's the potion coming in from Breath, so he's probably going to pull a lot of things together here. And are they going to use the Bloodlust here, or are they going to save it for the next dungeon? I'm not sure.
This is going to be very intriguing. You're going to actually, once again, go towards that wall there, just pull one along so they actually teleport to them.
They did use the Bloodlust right here. Okay, so they did not as big of a pull as I thought they would be. It was pretty similar to the pull of Mythic Pogchamp, but maybe they just wanted to make sure that they kill this pack because it is very difficult, as we talked about. Everything has to die at the same time. If it bolsters, it's very bad, sanguine and everything. So maybe they just thought, okay, we can kill the first boss very safely, and we're only getting a certain amount of Bloodlust anyway in this dungeon. So let's just save the Bloodlust for this one specific pull, so we're safe.
Definitely. I'm very glad to see that they're using Retrofresh in that vein. You mentioned it at the beginning, that's where the power lies for the warrior, but whether or not that kind of translates to overall dungeon speed remains to be seen, because, you know, we've seen this pack pull time and time again, and people have to constantly be kiting. It's a slow, laborious process, but at least now they're able to clean it up effectively and then move on down to catch up with Method a little bit here.
Yeah, we actually, both of the teams did this pull pretty safely. Like, we didn't see very big flowers bolstered and 50% HP healed with Sanguine. So I think both teams did this pull very cleanly. Of course, Mythic Pogchamp is a little bit ahead now. They're already on that last pull before O-Card. So they pulled the Dwellers with the Patrol, so the two Blossoms and the Dry together. Of course, they have some bolster going on here. We see the Blossoms being quite big, but they have the safety net of the Warlock with the Slow Ring. So in case they do get bolsters and they do get Sanguine, the tank can just kite it, as we can see Saps here kiting them up.
I'm really enjoying watching Free Marsy. I know I should be watching Mythic Pogchamp right now because they're ahead, but I'm enjoying watching kind of the technical prowess of Free Marsy with the composition that they've brought. It's slightly akin to what we saw from Skyline Dean in their regionals, of course, with the double rogue and the way they were going to be using those shrouds, but obviously with the brute force there of that warrior, still churning out good damage.
And especially on the bosses, we'll see the double rogue come in strong. Because we saw earlier, a lot of teams pull extra mob trash packs to bosses like O-Card, Dresseron, of course, with the whelps. And we also saw teams pulling bats to Xavius. So, of course, the rogue just getting this extra single target damage. And they have two of them. So they're gonna kill the bosses really fast.
The bats coming over to Oakenheart now. Oakenheart, this is Lord of the Rings. Oakenheart as well here, as we'll be able to power some of this down and get that buff, I suppose, off the bats with the Eviscerate from that Shuriken Storm. And likewise, Free Marsy just trying to catch up a little bit in that trash percent. But they are still behind. Despite the technical prowess of this composition, still a little bit behind, needing to catch up.
Yeah, it's also one thing to note that how difficult these trash pulls are for both of those teams, because they're really lacking in AoE CC. For example, Team Pogchamp does not have a single AoE stun. They don't have a solar beam, AoE silence or anything. So it's very difficult to coordinate these kind of pulls, especially with those Dwellers that need to be interrupted all the time. So especially a downside compared to all the other teams who mostly run with a Windwalker, who just have this AoE stun, or a Moonkin, of course, who has the solar beam.
Yep, and doing quite damage here on Oakenheart right now. Sebs has been picked up, so he'll be thrown down in a moment, but survives on through that quite nicely. It's only a fortified dungeon, so it's not too difficult. And you can see Free Marsy now lining up these bats with the Sky Step Potion going on up to pull those bats up towards Oakenheart themselves. Yeah,
so they're doing the same thing as Mythic Pogchamp did, of course, with the double rogues. So let's see if they can actually catch up a little bit here. Of course, they pulled the boss quite a bit later. They also have a longer cooldown on their Bloodlust, and they have one extra death. The percentage is pretty similar. Free Marsy 2% ahead, but the Mythic Pogchamp about to kill O-Card, then need to finish off the bats, and they're going to continue on to Dresseron.
Yeah, so the 69% ahead there, as Oakenheart will end up falling on the side of Mythic Pogchamp, and they're going to move into this little corridor after killing off some of these bats. But their percentage is looking good, and I think they'll probably still have the ability to be able to skip some of the trash packs towards Xavius later down the line. So they're really going to be able to min-max exactly how much they need going over there. And even if they wanted to skip the pack that we saw next to Xavius, we've still seen teams this tournament be able to just kind of, oh, we're on 98%. Okay, we'll pull that down a little bit and get one more. It's okay.
Yeah, we were worried earlier when we saw them pull the last boss. Oh, they're missing 1%. But no, they have these strats coming in. Of course, they've 100% figured out how much trash they need to pull and where they're going to pull it, of course. So we see Free Marsy is about to kill O-Card here. We can see the rogue damage, of course, crazy here. Almost 5 million DPS coming out of both of those rogues. Just insane damage with, of course, those bats coming in. And to be fair, the warrior is not going to be so bad when it comes to passive cleave, right?
Yeah.
Compared to a mage. So the warrior doesn't have to be that careful, and the rogues can just freely get their single target increase, while Mythic Pogchamp does have this mage, of course, who needs to be careful with his passive cleave.
Yeah, you can see already Seb's looking to basically kite, but I mean, it's only the blobs anyway. They'll eventually be slowed and then just be killed off quite nicely here by Mythic Pogchamp, and then eventually just going into Jesseron's room and being okay. Yeah, Free Marsy really wants to catch up. I'm wondering how much they're going to actually pull here. It looks like they're being quite patient with how many blobs they're going to pull initially.
Yeah, we've seen earlier that they pull one of the big elementals with the blobs if teams had a rogue. And I think almost all the teams had a rogue so far, except, we see some deaths coming in Team Pogchamp here. They bolstered one of the blobs so much. This is probably a full team wipe coming in as well. They do have the Palance down so they can rest back up, but it might be too close to the whelps. They might be... Yeah, there we go. So Seb's used the Palan, but the whelps are still bolstered. But let's see how they do this.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like once they realized that they bolstered that one thing so much, I guess they would say, okay, an intentional wipe here. Killing that blob is going to take forever. We don't really want to have to deal with that. So these whelps are kind of like the consolation prize of all that situation, I suppose, but at least it's better than the huge blob.
Definitely. And this actually just might cost them quite a bit, because Free Marsy caught up on them now already on Dresseron. Of course, Mythic Pogchamp pulled Dresseron now as well, but yeah, it's pretty, like they were ahead and now they're actually behind.
And the two rogues are going to melt this. They're going to pop a lot of whelps behind this and actually smash this boss down if they're not careful here. So Mythic Pogchamp, with that little kind of goop problem that they had going on in the previous little pathway, could have completely cost them the game. This is very, very dangerous here for Mythic Pogchamp right now, as Free Marsy is gaining momentum on them. Only 2% behind in that trash, but not doing too badly on the boss, but likewise, so is Mythic Pogchamp. This is going to be close.
This is definitely going to be close. And you can see how those affixes, how difficult those affixes are if you make one little mistake. If something heals for a little bit, stands in Sanguine, or you kill something a little bit too late, it bolsters so much, it gets so much HP, and it causes a full team wipe just because it would take too much time to kill it. So it actually cost a mistake, even though if you think about it, it was just a small mistake, just bolstering one mob, but yeah, it cost them 5 deaths.
Oh, don't get me going. When it's bolstering, sometimes I just take a rain check on that week. I'm like, nah, do I really want to deal with it? Especially with Pogs? I don't know about that one. But as you can see, they're controlling Dresseron well. Subs was moving and dashing in and out there to make sure that he can get away from that cave-in, and likewise, the breath wasn't really too impactful either. The pushback isn't going to knock him into any whelps, as Dresseron will fall for Free Marsy. Likewise, on 2% on the other side here for Mythic Pogchamp. Still very close, neck and neck. Free Marsy just 2% behind on the trash.
And this is definitely super close. Of course, 5 deaths versus 1 death is going to matter at the very end, but we'll see how this goes. Also, they might have a different strat here coming in with the double rogue, as they have this double shroud, and there's a lot of trash they can skip. Of course, they still need 12% trash percentage, but the double shroud is definitely probably saves you one of the invis potions and gives you more damage because you can take others.
Well, we really liked when we saw it in our first series, right, Nagura, where we had the stealth to the middle of these and actually just pulling the 2 packs together. But look at this, constantly being able to shroud past everything. Just taking this pack, is that pack 12%?
I don't think so. I wonder if they kill this pack and then maybe pull the bats into the boss, as we've seen earlier.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen a lot of groups pull this pack, actually, because it is a very difficult pack, as there's the stalkers coming in, and they have decoys, and they bolster, and sanguine, so it's actually quite and we see subs dying here. Let's see if Wrath can stay alive here, as this mob is really bolstered here.
But look at how much damage the warrior was able to do with that. He knows he doesn't need to save a lot of his cooldowns for Xavius, which is the fortified setting anyway. Big AoE damage on this last pack, and you're absolutely right. Yeah, a good eye on the bats being able to be pulled down towards the boss, because that's been a big factor, especially when you've got this double rogue. This composition here from Free Marsy, as much as they're a little bit behind right now with Mythic Pogchamp on Xavius, is tailored for these kinds of strategies, and they're performing well.
Yeah, we see they didn't use their battle rest for subs. Of course, I feel like they should have used this battle rest because they had 2 still, and even though it was only a healer, it still could have been a little bit damaged, and every little second matters. So I feel like they should have used this battle rest, but Mythic Pogchamp already in the last boss on Xavius, they still need 7% trash. I don't think the bats actually give 7%, I think they only give 5%. So they will have to go, even if they pull the bats now to the boss, they will have to backtrack and kill something later on.
Did Mythic Pogchamp skip the pack up at the top, or did they kill the one before Xavius?
I'm pretty sure they skipped everything to the boss.
Okay, so technically speaking, once they've killed this, they could get that pack, but it really depends on the other side how Free Marsy is able to deal with this, especially since they're getting so many eviscerates off of those bats.
Yeah, and Free Marsy did pull the bats, as we can see here, and they only need 5% trash. So after the bats and the boss die, they're actually finished, while Mythic Pogchamp needs more than just the bats. So this is going to be very close between those two.
Survived the explosion there on the transition. 43% at the moment, 70% on the other side here of Free Marsy. Those bats still there. If they can kill off everything, they have a little bit of leniency when it comes to the death timers as well, with the 25 seconds against the 15 seconds. It's getting very close right now. Mythic Pogchamp needs to kill this boss and needs to get to trash fast.
And they just popped their Bloodlust. Free Marsy's Bloodlust just came back up, so they're gonna melt this boss at the moment. It's on 40%. Just came the 50% AoE. Of course, there was no problem for that group. But yeah, we see Mythic Pogchamp, of course, a little bit lower on the boss, 20%. But as I said, I'm still not sure how they're gonna deal with the 7% of trash that they need. I'm confused on why they didn't pull the bats into the boss, or what exactly happened. They might have made a mistake on the skip.
Wrath taking a lot of damage, but did not trigger Purgatory before all of that. You can see all the debuffs on him as well here, so he's having a bit of a harder time staying alive, but it should be fine with 15% left. 10% on the side of Xavier's for Mythic Pogchamp, but it doesn't look like they're going to have responses to what we're seeing on the side. Retrofresh actually goes down here. The boss is still at 18%, so it's not exactly the most clean of positions, but they do still have one res left, Nagura.
Yeah, they have one res left. They are about to kill the boss, 10% left, and then they need to finish off the bats, and they're done. We see Mythic Pogchamp killed Xavier's, but they need to go back and kill the rest of this trash. So they're gonna pull up this trash together. I'm not sure if this trash pack gives 7%, but it might just be enough.
Yeah, I think it doesn't matter regardless. It looks like Free Marsy is going to be able to kill Xavier's, and they need to get the bats as well, but they are so low at this point. They've done control DPS to them. They should be able to get to that 100% here, and they have less death than Pogchamp, so it should...
As we hop into this match then, does this decision not to change to Arcane, do we still feel like the mage comp is that much more favored?
For me, it's a scary one. I really think that there could be a little bit of a glimmer at the end of the tunnel here for Free Marsy, but it's still strong on this map, Nagura. What do you think about the mage here?
I think the mage is still really favored, no matter if he plays Arcane or Fire. Of course, we saw the Arcane mage coming in earlier, and they weren't that far ahead earlier against Method and A. I think it was a pretty close matchup still, even though he was Arcane and he did all the spell seal stuff. So I think Dr. J just figured after the nerf, I'm just gonna play Fire, play my consistent spec that I always play, and just go for safety.
All right, let's get into it then. We do have the Amalgam Souls already being attacked. You can see Mythic Pogchamp leaving a little bit of a lead, getting up here as fast as possible. And of course, a few mechanics to really watch out for. Obviously, that 180 degrees cleave that the tank's going to have to deal with, those swirling sides that are very irritating. And you can see that Dr. J here has the debuff. All he has to do is a little stutter step, a little bit of a stutter step out of that, and try and get as much damage out as a mage can whilst having to move around.
Yeah, of course, also one thing to note that the rogues are not playing the same spec on Free Marsy. It's one sub rogue, one NASA rogue. So if you think about it, if both of the rogues play sub, then it would just be like a lot of single target damage but barely any AoE. So it's good that they play two different specs so they don't have the exact same strength, because you don't want the exact same thing from all 3 DPS coming in. If you have all 3 DPS just doing AoE damage and barely any single target damage, then the bosses won't die. If you only have single target, no AoE, then the trash won't die. So it's good to have some versatility coming in from Free Marsy here.
Absolutely, got to agree. And one small thing about the boss positioning as well, you can see that the tanks have, before the transition phase, of course, repositioned the boss slightly towards one edge, so that 180-degree angle isn't covering huge amounts of the room, so that gives everyone else a good opportunity to be able to move around. But now we're in the transition phase here, Nagura.
Yeah, so we see both of the DKs, of course, gripping those spirits together at one point, just nuking them down. And one of the spirits is usually being succeeded. Yeah, we can see it here, covered by the group frame behind Elsaret. One of the spirits is rooted by the Residue, of course, because if one of the spirits is alive, then Amalgam of Souls does not cast his AoE, his Soul Burst. So they can put him to 15% HP, and then he will cast his AoE.
Yeah, during this transition phase is actually one of the moments where Free Marsy can catch up a little bit, because some of the ads are actually very close to the boss and you can get more eviscerates out while that's going on. Of course, you still do need to focus on some of those ads, because if they reach, it's kind of a bad time. But beyond that, at least they can catch up a little. Despite that, though, Mythic Pogchamp's DPS was very, very strong. You can see there that our Warlock was able to pump out a ton and push them forwards just a little bit.
Yeah, I'm impressed by the Warlock's damage, actually. I think he got a little bit lucky here on this pull. And yeah, that's probably it. They probably got that Troubled Soul as well and released it whenever Shala had his Sapphire Secret ready to fear it and proc it.
Yeah.
Free Marsy a little bit behind. Of course, as you said, there's those spirits that can cleave for more single target damage, but it's a very short duration. All the other fight is just pure single target, so the rogues are not getting this increased damage, and you can see just how much faster Mythic Pogchamp was here.
All right, so just going to have to chill out a little bit for this RP as they open the door. It's a very slow opening door. We get that. That's fine. And then beyond that, it's time to deal with spiders. Now, we did see in our previous series, Nigger, big pulls, not only with the spiders, but also to the next pack as well. And obviously, with bursting, that can get a little bit problematic sometimes.
Definitely. Bursting, very difficult affix to deal with for Arrested Roots, especially because they don't have, they usually don't have this burst healing that a Holy Paladin can do, and they also don't have an immunity for themselves. A Paladin can just, let me just bubble and heal everyone else.
Yeah.
But Arrested Root has to deal with it himself. We can see Alcerat actually playing with a Tree of Life, so Incarnation, which is very good to deal with those big pulls. If you only do a couple of big pulls, then you can just use your cooldowns to deal with this the huge bursting stacks.
And I'm to that point with these affixes, I'm kind of glad we're seeing Mythic Pogchamp play a little slower in comparison to our previous series, because you saw that they were dealing with some of the smaller spiders first. And when you've got a mage like this, you are effectively playing with fire. If you're gonna actually go into a dangerous spot like that and try and burst everything down, the AoE damage can be catastrophically strong, especially if you've got combustion with all of those flame strikes, etc. So you don't want to overlap those bursting stacks and then just have everyone pop.
Definitely. So we see Mythic Pogchamp here pulling the one pack where the Arcanist is on, so we can see him. He's already mind controlled by the DK, of course. After this pack, we will see if they actually use the buff as well for the trash packs, or if they choose to only use it for bosses. And here we go. Okay, so they will use the spell stealing buff for this pull, probably gonna pull the rest of the hallway, and the one group that jumps off immediately after they kill it. So they probably have the mage buff there, and of course Free Marsy pulled a little bit slow here. They pulled only those two mobs that are the patrol, so one champion and one scout, which is interesting because it's a very, very slow pull.
Yeah, and to that effect, it kind of feels like they're taking it patiently, not wanting to risk anything, to the point where they know that this isn't their picks, and they know that they're probably going to be behind a little bit of an effect. So just try it, give it a go, see how you're going to fare against this mage on the other side. They may not even know it's fire, to be perfectly honest with you. They may be just like, oh, okay, well, you know, we're going up against an arcane mage, but I'm very curious to see how this arcane buff is going to fare going into this pull right now.
Yeah, we can see the mage, of course, Dr. J doing insane amounts of damage here to this pack. Apparently it doesn't matter if it's fire or arcane.
Yeah.
He still does a lot of damage as he's deleting this pack. It takes a little bit longer, I think, than an arcane mage does, but it still dies very, very fast, of course, and it takes out so much risk of these pulls. As we talked about a lot already, that these pulls are very difficult to deal with all these archers having this shoot the target's random players does a lot of damage. So if you just kill them really fast, you just pretty much don't have to deal with all those abilities.
I feel like that was a cleaner and faster set kill than the arcane mage when it came to how much damage he was able to pump out in that short space of time. The setup seemed a little bit longer, as you're mentioning, but beyond that, that was powerful from Dr. J. And you can see here the Mythic Pogchamp is really ramping things up in middle, and now the buff is gone, and it's not exactly the easy for him, but still you're getting quite a bit done with that flame patch, obviously, with that flame strike having been utilized.
Yeah, for sure. We see Free Marsy, as you said, just pull a little bit slower. I said before the match started, they might just go really safe and just hope that maybe Mythic Pogchamp does something wrong, and that's how they win. Probably didn't practice it too much, as J.Bean Method and A said as well. They just don't have the mage. They're probably going to lose, so let's just play it safe. Let's not have that many deaths, and there you go. They have 0 deaths. They're playing it very clean. Of course, a lot slower pulls, but yeah, if Mythic Pogchamp does mistakes, then it might be their opportunity to catch up.
It might be. It was interesting to see if the warrior was going to try and equalize things out on some of these packs, but it's nowhere near. Like, it's very difficult for that to occur, especially when a warrior's got so many things to worry about on these kind of packs as well, with the amount of AoE damage that you're going to have to move out of. But Mythic Pogchamp well in the driving seat at the moment and looking strong.
Yeah, we also see Free Marsy do not have this Holy Paladin. Most, or a lot of groups chose to play with the Rasta Druid. Elsarat used to play a lot of Holy Paladin. I think he didn't play Rasta Druid a single time in the regionals.
Right.
But he does play the Rasta Druid for this particular map pool, just because of this Dark Heart Thicket at the start with the Sanguine and the Bowstring. A lot of, some other groups have the Moonkin, so they don't have to bring the Rasta Druid, as Holy Paladin is usually better for utility. But these groups just do not have the Moonkin, so they bring the Rasta Druid. And for this map, it's just slightly worse, as we see subs dying here for Free Marsy, because they just do not have this bop for their melee players.
Yeah, you're definitely correct on that. You're right, Elzarat was traditionally Holy Paladin throughout of it. Subs was actually flexing quite a bit when you saw Free Pumps playing it out with some Holy Paladins, some Resto Druid as well, so very well versed on either side. They've only lost 2 deaths at the moment, so it's not too unclean here from Free Marsy, but Method Pogchamp is just in a great spot and looking to get these buffs and make sure that Ilyasana's fight is just not long, which kind of eliminates some of the risks.
Yeah, Ilyasana definitely one of the most difficult boss fights in this tyrannical setting here, as there is this Brutal Glaive that just does so much damage, and on top of the Dark Rush, usually we see the mages with the buff, of course, mate Dr. J doing a lot of damage here. If he gets the Dark Rush on him, he's just going to block off the debuff, of course, so he doesn't have to move that. He can keep their Arcane buff and just pump up all his damage.
17 million DPS at the moment. Big numbers coming out here, and eventually that will be pushed in the transition phase. Where's that Brutal Glaive going on to the Warlock, but Warlock's able to deal with that quite nicely with things like Unending as well as Dark Pact, very easily controlled.
Yeah, we see, of course, Elsarat has a difficult job healing, not only in this boss, but the whole dungeon is very difficult for healers with the Bursting Affix and the Grievous, and of course the Tyrannical boss is doing so much damage. So it's good that they have the mage, and the bosses are just so much shorter, so it's reducing the healing that he needs to do.
And also, you know, some of your DPSs actually have an easier time DPSing when your healer is at range. Kind of different to what we saw in our previous series, of course, when the one ranged damage dealer, the mage, was constantly being chased around by the I-beam. So small things, but small things that will benefit Method Pogchamp in the long run.
Yeah, they actually have been really lucky with that fixate just being an Elsarat all the time, because they actually have 3 eligible targets for this beam, while on the other side, Free Marsy only does have subs on the Rasta Druid, who is eligible for all those ranged abilities like the Brutal Glaive and that fixated beam. So subs can just deal with all those abilities, while the melees can just nuke the boss.
Yep, not too bad at all. So 10% about to go down here. Method Pogchamp looking good. Ilyasana on the other side is going to take quite a while longer to actually kill off here. And they do have 1 battle res, so it's not too impactful if, say, subs goes down to some unforeseen mechanic. And as you can see as well, the charge is being controlled well in a tight and concise area here by Free Marsy. So far, their preparation for this boss is looking good.
Yeah, so Method Pogchamp does have Bloodlust ready again. Actually, no, they don't. It was the Mage's Bloodlust, I'm sorry. So 1 minute for their Bloodlust. So they can't use it for this trash pool. They probably save it for the next boss fight. But we'll probably see a very big pool coming in from Method Pogchamp here as the tank steps is running through with the Sky Step Potion, gathering everything up. And then they didn't actually use the Mage buff here, which is also one thing to note. They didn't spell steal, so we're probably just going to see some cooldowns coming in from everyone else, just destroying this pack here.
Yeah, it's usually a little bit scary, but ooh, actually that's a lot of damage coming in from Dr. J there towards the end. I mean, even regardless of having the buff or not, you still see a lot of AoE damage coming out from a Fire Mage in this kind of instance when there's, what, how many targets there? At least 20 or something with all of the little dudes?
There's definitely a lot of.
Yeah.
Maybe he did take the buff anyway, or it's just Mage being that good. I'm not sure. Maybe he did it when I wasn't watching.
There you go. Meanwhile, Ilyasana on the other side, 53%. Free Marsy trying to catch up. And actually, by the looks of things, popping Bloodlust once again to try and get through this boss, because it will take them quite a while to actually burn this down with the composition that they have. And, ooh, Arrow going quite low, but he's a rogue, so he's stable and steady.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, of course, the difference between the boss fight duration, having a mage and not having a mage. Even though it's fire, and you could still tell that it takes quite a bit longer with the nerf coming in from the buff and Dr. J being fire and not arcane. You can see the difference between the regionals, where the bosses just melted within less than a minute. And of course, it took them a little bit longer here with the nerf and the fire mage, but it's still a big difference to just not having this mage at all. You can see Free Marsy still on the boss, still on 25%. But you, of course, have to consider as well that they also did a lot smaller pulls and a lot safer pulls, so it makes sense.
Yeah, it's just risk and reward. I mean, the fact that you can negate so much risk in the fights has knock-on effects. You effectively do not have to res another person in an earlier fight. You have it available to you later on in the dungeon when things like, you know, the last boss can be very scary and things. So all of that, you can see all the sick bats being focused down here by these dominators on towards some of the DPS, but they are well out of range for those bats to ever get there. They're nice and slowed. You've probably got Sacrolash there on the Warlock too.
Yeah, we saw Musclebrad drop really low here, proc his cheat death while going in. All those pulls, like this whole dungeon is just very brutal for melees. And then if you think about Free Mars just having 3 melees. So, of course, this pack here with the fix-it, as you said, Musclebrad just went in for 1 second and immediately procced his cheat death because it's just so brutal to melees, while the ranged players just stand very far and safety. Everything is slowed, nothing's ever going to reach them. And melee just wanted to just, do a little bit of damage and cheat death.
I can only imagine Musclebrad, because we got a chance to speak to him quite a bit, and we've seen him streaming as well. You know, he could be like, come on, man, I can't do much about this. I'm a rogue. I'm in the middle of all these bats. That's annoying. But probably doing it with a smile on his face all the same. Regardless, though, a very intense team that's been practicing heavily and moving on to Smash Spite now and just getting their mage set up to rock those numbers.
Yeah, so of course the mage setup does take quite a while. Everyone else in their team just sitting there pretty much looking at the mage doing nothing. Just, can you hurry up? Come on, steal those buffs. But they do have the Bloodlust ready, so the boss is gonna die really fast as soon as Dr. J has his buffs, and there they go, and they pop their Bloodlust, and we will see the mage numbers go up any second now. We see on the other side, Free Marsy is pulling. I'm not sure if they did the same pull in the hallway, the big pull where they pulled everything together, if they went a little bit slowly, but it looks like they pulled everything. So they do one riskier pull actually, and not doing it as safe as they did before.
There's a bit more of a focus on kiting by the looks of things instead of being able to blow everything up instantly. You can see the warrior still popping off while that's going down at the bottom here, but the rogue's having a bit of a difficult time just staying away from all the fire that's going on. A little bit of cleaves at the front there as well from the big dudes, and from that point on, I mean, it's so far behind from them. They're going to have a miracle to be able to catch up. They're hoping for Mythic Pogchamp to have a wipe, if not 2 wipes. Yeah,
there has to be a full team wipe at the very, very end of a boss fight maybe, so they have to rest and do everything again because, as you said, they're very, very far behind. So Smash Spot is about to die, 18% for Mythic Pogchamp here. The boss, not that difficult if it dies that fast. Of course, the longer this boss fight takes, the more difficult it is, because you can see those bats flying around on the side. They fixate on random players, and then they leave around this line of goo on the floor. And the less space you have, the more difficult it is to deal with this charge coming in from the boss. As it fixates one player, it needs to be intercepted by either a tank or someone who does have a big cooldown up. And of course, afterwards, it's a big knockback that knocks everyone back. If you have lines on the whole room, or the floor is covered with those lines, then you might get knocked into one of them, and they do a shit ton of damage too, so it might be difficult for them to deal with it.
And that's one of the risks you face as well, Nagura, right? Like when it comes to, so we were saying Mythic Pogchamp has to wipe, right, fully for we see Free Marsy on the other side to try and catch up. But for a mage team on this instance, if they do wipe, obviously the Arcanist is kind of then in limbo, and you have to deal with that situation as well.
Yeah, definitely. If you do lose your Arcanist, if you have a full team wipe, you have to go all the way back and either grab him up again, because not only do you lose the buff, but you also lose percentage. Oh, we see a big pull coming in.
It makes me so nervous,
wow.
Nagura.
Okay, so you're pulling the boss with all the Lancers here. This is I don't think I've ever seen this pull before, and this is very risky, because not only is there the beam that cuts off the room, there's also all those Lancers jumping around. If you get hit by one of those jumps and you get stunned, you're probably going to die. So this is a very risky pull coming in from Mythic Pogchamp.
Yeah, we got a good opportunity to just kind of see it in practice in our previous series, right? And even then it scared me again, and now it's scaring me here, but you see the control behind it. So they're clearly well versed at doing it, even though it causes me nightmares. As you can see, the Lancers just jumping everywhere. And now actually, the Lancers are everywhere. It's all over the place. But eventually, they will get them all together again and be able to deal with Cortalis in the process.
Yeah, of course, this is a very good pull for the Rogue, especially Musclebrad is getting a lot of single target damage, and of course the Warlock as well, gaining damage from it. But I can just see the healer Alcerad having to deal with all those bursting stacks on top of the Grievous, on top of all the other damage going on in this first first phase here with the Shadow Bolts coming in. So it's a very good healing coming through from Elsared here. And now they're going to get into the second phase where the big Shadow Bolt volley is going to come in. All of them are going to have to use defensive cooldown to survive it. And then everyone is going to get buffed, get the damage buff, get the healing buff, and the HP buff.
And let's talk about the controlled chaos briefly of that moment with all the Lancers. As they're jumping around and stuff like that, you still have to deal with things like Cortalis's Glaive. So you have to have the presence of mind of saying, oh, okay, it casts there. Yes, it's a slow-moving ability, but when you're deciding, okay, I'm getting out of range of a Lancer's jump, etc., it's like, sometimes you could potentially get clipped. So kudos here to Mythic Pogchamp for all of that control that we saw.
Definitely. We also saw them in the regionals doing this one pull on Maw of Souls where they pulled the whole boat with the mini-boss. Was also, like, this team just chooses to do those big pulls, these crazy pulls, and it's probably their practice hours that makes these things work, right? They probably had to practice this pull a couple of times so no one fails it. And it's interesting to note as well that they choose to do this big pull as they probably know that they're so far ahead at this point because they have the mage versus no mage, and they still chose to do this very risky pull because they're so confident in their abilities to do so.
And notice that they actually killed the Arcanist as well. They have foregone any kind of buffs going into the later stages of this fight, knowing that it takes a bit of a while there for Dr. J to really get that rolling. Doesn't want to be taking any risks. They probably know that they're in a very comfortable position at the moment. Free Marsy still on Smash Spite here, and eventually they should be able to bring that down. But beyond that, Dantalian Axe here being controlled effectively here by Mythic Pogchamp.
Yeah, so in this boss, it's not as easy as it looks like. There's some things that can still wipe you for sure. We have these swarms coming out, attaching to random players, as we can see it here on the tank. Of course, it's the best target is the tank, because then you can just pretty much ignore it, because that tank is, of course, very tanky, has defensive cooldowns and a lot of self-healing, so they don't have to focus it very much. But if it's on a more squishier player, then it can be very dangerous, and it can cause someone to die, especially someone like Dr. J if he doesn't have his ice buck ready, for example.
Yeah, I mean, it all works hand in hand with each other, right? Especially when Seb's, like, once the big AoE volley comes out here from something like Dantalian Axe, yes, you've got the Druid to be able to heal up the entirety of the group quite methodically and normally, again, no pun intended, but beyond that, you've got things like Consumption on the side of that, the Blood DK, so everyone's got that little bit of extra leech to help them stay alive when the big AoE moves come out.
We can actually see Elsared here, Mythic Pogchamp set is completely out of mana, so they don't have a Moonkin for Innovate. They do still have 22% to do from a boss, but as he said, there's the leech coming in, so and he regens some of the mana back, so he should be able to heal the rest of this boss fight. 10%, of course, they have the 100% trash percentage. Only one death coming in from Mythic Pogchamp. Very clean run from them.
I like to call Consumption, when bigger packs at least, basically a 45-second lay on hands. It's really nice against big packs, but also has that added lovely benefit of the leech for your friends on these bosses, and that is going to be...
So much as what does maybe stymie that mage a little bit. And it is, in fact, going to be the Eye of Ajara.
Dude, I didn't even recognize Muscle Bra without his hat on. Like, that was weird. I thought it was just kind of part of his body.
Did anybody else think he was bald? Maybe it's just I wanted him to be bald. Yeah, okay.
I just assumed it was a Lego piece that kind of socketed it on, but there you go. That's how it goes. Anyway, into game number 3, 1-1 at the moment. Mythic Pogchamp goes up against Free Marsy, and we are on Eye of Ashara. And Nagura, in our previous series, we did see a few little interesting techniques to try and go for that, but it doesn't look like either of these teams is going to strike on that just yet.
Yeah, so we see both the teams do pretty much the exact same thing. They stealthed through the first few packs, pulled this one pack that is standing in front of the boss with the boss together, using that Bloodlust. Of course, there's no affix as far as I'm aware that is preventing, so it's a Necrotic, Skittish, and Tyrannical, so there's no bowstring, nothing that would prevent them to pull the boss with everything else. Of course, Necrotic, as I said earlier, is difficult to deal with if you pull so many mobs together, and of course you're also trying to keep them alive as long as possible for the rogues to get this extra damage. So Necrotic might be difficult for the tank, but other than that, it's fun.
Yeah, definitely a double-edged sword there, and you can see why our Breath is dealing with that, just moving away from everything and just being able to effectively reset those stacks. So just small kiting moves while dealing with the boss as well. The boss will take a little while because obviously it is tyrannical, and as long as they can deal with the eventual charges in the spear as well that they have to deal with, they should be okay. Some classes are able to just dodge it straight, but oftentimes you just want to throw that spear into one of these mobs and then have it pincer there down on the ground, as you can see in the middle of the screen.
So we can also see that the rogues actually changed their specs, so both of the rogues are the same spec now in Free Marsy, and Musclebra actually changed his spec as well. So some versatility coming in from those rogues, and as well, it is tyrannical, as we said, so the rogues just gonna gain so much damage in this dungeon. And I'm not sure exactly. Oh, the warrior is actually playing Fury as well. So we see a lot of spec changes coming in here.
Yeah, actually not what I completely expected, but that's how it's going to play out. Interesting to see. You can see Retrofresh actually just switches onto that ad, kills it off once it's speared down, and then more are going to pop out. Yeah, you kind of have to deal with the ads here a little bit more on Tyrannical. If it's fortified, you can effectively kind of ignore a lot of the ads and just kind of eventually burn down the boss because it dies so fast. But here on Tyrannical, there's a bit more to pay attention to, but look at that. Method Pogchamp already moving on.
Yeah, Mythic Pogchamp using that Shroud from the rogue coming in. So that means either it's ready again or no, it's not. It can't be ready again, right? It's only 2 minutes in and the Shroud has a longer cooldown than that. So that means they must have used their Invis Potion at the very start, using that Shroud here to get past this trash and pulling the Arcanist with the droplets together. Of course, again, the rogue getting a lot of single target damage here. And there's no bolstering, no Sanguine, so the mage is actually not in danger here of cleaving anything down too early. That's one thing that Dr. J talked to me about, that there's a lot of bolstering this time around for the global finals affixes, so it actually doesn't favor Fire Mage at all because of this passive cleave. So it's actually good for them that they probably picked Afashara and there's no bolstering, so the mage can just AoE whatever he wants.
Yeah, definitely. And you can see, as much as for me, like Nelths is, or even Halls of Valor, those are the two instances where kiting is very, very impactful and important. You can see it there in practice here in Eye of Ashara as well. Just with Sebs trying to negate as much of the necrotic as possible, even not having to kite like too far away, because actually there's not that much room beyond down towards the hill, of course, because there's still a lot of trash there. So just kiting in little circles and looking for more trash to just kind of cleave down.
And then the Warlock also favors this whole kiting thing again with Necrotic, right? So the tank has a lot easier time kiting with the slow from the Warlock being in all those droplets. So if there's a pull where Necrotic might be a problem, he can just tell Shella to equip this slow ring for the next pull, and then he just has a very easy time just not getting hit by those mobs. As we can see him kite right now, just not getting hit by anything, not getting Necrotic stacks. It's a little bit boring for the tank usually, as he just walks around and does nothing, but it's so much safer.
Yeah,
we can actually see something very interesting here coming in from Alcerad. So he used the Sky Step Potion, and he's actually doing the pull instead of the tank. That is very interesting to see.
Was he Sky Step Potion or was he still on his mount?
It was the Sky Step as far as
okay, nice. So, yeah, there's been moments where we've seen those druids kind of pulling everything on mount, you know, kind of just with that face pull, but that's a big pull.
It is actually a huge pull. I'm not sure where this Hydra came from, but it seems like Alcerad left them quite a bit earlier, as we didn't see it, and he just pulled half of the dungeon pretty much with this Hydra. This is a crazy pull coming in by Mythic Pogchamp.
If there was ever time to kite, it's right now, especially since what's most important as well as why this can be difficult is because it is skittish. This is the only instance in the pool that has skittish. So if, say, for example, some of these little guys fall out of line, not chasing Sebs, something could just turn around and whack one of these guys, but it looks like they're being very controlled with it, doing very well in the end, and I've got to say, it's a really impressive performance coming out from Mythic Pogchamp so far.
Yeah, good thing both of those teams have the rogues for the Tricks of the Trade to increase that threat, but we also saw Dr. J doing something very smart, as mages tend to get aggro a lot because they have a lot of burst AoE damage. Yeah. We saw Dr. J stand just right behind the tank in case he does get aggro, so the mobs still walk into the same direction and they're not spreading each other out. And of course, they were slowed by Shella, so even if Dr. J has aggro, they're still walking the same direction and they're not going to reach him because they're slowed.
Moving on to Lady Hate Coil, and it's important to note as well here on Skittish while they're kiting those big packs, Blood DK is actually not terrible at being able to hold a little bit of aggro as long as things are very close to him. You can keep using that Blood Boil. It's able to kind of just control a little bit of the aggro on a tiny bit of range, and also you have Blood Drinker as well for some of those bigger mobs. But you can see here, just spreading out, making sure they're not going onto those sand piles to blow those up with the Lightning Strike to begin things off, and just making sure as well that Necrotic doesn't stack up too much with those globules wanting to hit Seb. They'll keep chasing, but they won't catch up.
Yes, so we also see, of course, Tyrannical for Lady Heiko is quite a difficult boss to deal with, actually, because she does this Lightning Strike that is an unavoidable AoE on all of the players. Of course, some people have an easier time to deal with, but as we can see, subs drop to 1% HP on this AoE coming down, as we can see how difficult it is to deal with. But I assume all of those players have exactly calculated just how much damage it does and have equipped defensives if they need it, and if they don't need it, they will rotate defensive cooldowns to survive this AoE damage.
Lady Hate Coil on the other side here for free Marsy is almost dead, but they have not touched any of the big trash that we saw Mythic Pogchamp already kind of blast down. So that is going to cause them, you know, a little bit of concern. They're going to have to go and start doing all of that, whilst Lady Hate Coil now only on 30%. And also, you've got to be a little bit mindful of some of the other abilities on Lady Hate Coil. Obviously, the breath. You don't want to be pushing people back into unfavorable situations and unfavorable positions. That's why you see the last-second turnaround from a lot of these players to make sure they're not pointing it towards their friends.
Yeah, definitely. We see them doing a good job here on Mythic Pogchamp's side. And it's interesting to see, of course, that this dungeon is very open. So there's a lot of very different ways you can do this dungeon. Of course, we saw Free Marsy pull Lady Hate Coil first while Mythic Pogchamp did this trash pull. You can also just go to Serpentrix first if you choose to do so.
True, yeah.
Instead of Lady Hate Coil. We also saw something very interesting coming out of Omega Sniped earlier, where they just went the right side at the start. So there's so many different ways you can do this dungeon. Sometimes it's difficult to tell which team is ahead because it's not very linear. So there might just be Free Marsy just doing a really crazy pull and just catch right up to Mythic Pogchamp.
Yeah, it was a real shame for Omega Snipe in that previous one because they failed the initial right move, and then if they hadn't have done that, I mean, they finished the instance just a little bit after their opponent, so if they hadn't failed first time on that right path, they could have quite easily won that dungeon. So, but at the same time, you know, as you were mentioning, you can do the bosses in different orders. They're going to kill off some more of these trash packs before they actually pull the next boss, but if you do them in different orders, of course, then you don't have to deal with the wins on some of the next bosses, for example, with this one. So, again, knock-on effects here for the instance make the routing very interesting or just across the board.
So we see Dr. J actually dying here on this pretty big trash pull that Mythic Pogchamp pulled off here. We also see Free Marsy doing pretty similar pull than Mythic Pogchamp did before. They pulled a lot of crabs and goblins with this big Hydra, and I think there's a hard shell somewhere in as well. So they're also doing a very big pull, but they're missing some of that AoE damage compared to Mythic Pogchamp because they just have those two rogues. The two rogues do a lot of single target damage if they have something to cleave, but their AoE damage is very limited compared to something like a Fire Mage or a Warlock. So they're struggling a little bit on those AoE trash packs, trying to kill them fast.
Onto Serpentrix here, and once they've actually brought down the initial head in terms of its phase, obviously then we'll have another 2 heads spawn. You've got to initially, I mean, for me, the most important thing is stopping Serpentrix going into his crazy rage. So going to interrupt him is very important, but then dealing with the other heads as well is equally important because it is tyrannical. You can't just blast down the main head as they'll pump out a lot of damage themselves as well.
Exactly. We see them pulled one crab pack actually to the boss, of course, for Masalva and probably Shelly as well. We see Steps kiting it around. They're slow probably from Shelly as well, and we can see more crab packs coming. I assume one of the players, probably the healer Alcerat, will just continue to pull the crab packs to the boss, so it's a continuous damage increase for Masalva here, which is very smart, and of course the healer doesn't have too much to do in this boss, but as you mentioned earlier, because they already killed Hate Coil, that means they actually have the wins already, and Serpentrix does have this spit where there's pool spawning on the ground, as we just saw, and it actually gets affected by the wind. So if the wind turns in a not favorable direction, then it's almost impossible to dodge because it almost instantly reaches the floor. If the wind goes another direction, then you have time to move out. So sometimes if it just hits immediately and you might not be on full HP, it might be very difficult on Tyrannical.
Dealt with the Arcane and Flame heads pretty easily there. Just a little bit of split damage, more focus on towards the Arcane head to begin things, and Serpentrix now just slowly dying off. And then, of course, you know, the one player is going to... Is it always the tank that gets applied the debuff in there? Or is it always melee that gets the debuff where you put down the puddles?
No, it's always a random player.
Oh, it's a random player. Okay. So beyond that, though, it's just extra puddles that you have to dodge out of, basically. So lots of goop, lots of goop.
Yeah, usually what some people do is they would just stand still and spawn the puddles in one place because it actually doesn't do that much damage. I think they didn't do such a good job at not spreading it out in Mythic Pogchamp, but they have a lot of space in this room, so it's not a big deal.
There's so many crabs everywhere. They just keep coming, and as you rightfully called before, I mean, anytime they come in, it's not only the extra damage that's coming in from Muscle Bra, but it's also extra little bits of percentage that they're not going to have to deal with later on down the line. Free Marsy, though, 81% in terms of trash, now only just starting on Serpentrix, but because it is tyrannical, these bosses are more impactful on the overall time in the dungeon. So Serpentrix being about 60% ahead here for Mythic Pogchamp is still great pace.
Definitely. They're 4% behind in trash percentage, Mythic Pogchamp. Of course, they're about to kill this boss. We also see those seagulls that are pulled, that got rooted by Alcaraz. Mages tend to pull those with their passive cleave, so they have to kill the seagull afterwards as well, or have to kill it right now. They're very scary because if the tank actually gets packed by them, then some random player that is close is going to get aggro from the boss and might just get one shot. So we see them killing it right now. Someone else, probably Alcaraz, taunted it and is just kiting it so they don't get the disorient.
That's, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's kind of crazy for me when I came into Ioshara the first time. It's like everyone's warning you about this giant Hydra head, this huge giant up towards the top that smashes down on the ground. But the seagulls, be careful. They're the scariest thing in the dungeon. Don't mess with seagulls. Definitely
do not mess with them. We see Zeps here pulling some more crabs together. They did kill Serpentrix, so it's still 40% boss percentage ahead to Free Marsy. And they only need 20% trash. So 4 Nagas that you need to kill at the very end before you spawn the last boss also give percentage. So they're doing the boat skip here, which we're probably going to see from both teams. They're just jumping up on the boat. Oh, and this is interesting to see as well, because they actually pulled this the crab pack.
Oh, so they take it with them.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to take the crab pack with them up to the next boss, giving increasingly cleave again. So we can see them utilize the rogue so well for this whole dungeon.
This isn't quite as clean as the Skyline D skip up here. They were able to do it instantaneously.
Yeah, I think Seps might have done something wrong here, and there's no gateway. I'm not sure if maybe Shell is in combat and can. Actually, you can't put gateway in combat, right? So
right, yeah.
I'm not sure if there was one mistake going on here, but if it doesn't cost them too much time, they're still ahead.
This is becoming a Benny Hill film at this point. You got to be very careful here. Now they've just decided, okay, enough is enough. Let's go down, kill this stuff. There's a snail. Oh, get away from the snail. What's even scarier than a seagull? It's a snail. Terrifying creatures.
Yeah, okay, so they had this strat of pulling up the crabs to the next boss, which is in theory very smart, but it didn't work out, and then they just chose to, okay, so this is taking too much time. We have to go down, kill them, and go to the next boss. So this actually cost them quite a bit. Even though no one died, of course, it still cost them quite a bit of time, because a crab pack like that, you don't want to kill it by itself. Like, it costs you some time. Of course, the time as well that you lost by not being able to make the jump. Hopefully they make the jump now, as we can see the gateway coming out. And now they're on to the last boss. To the second to last boss.
Yeah, not too much to have to deal with here. It's a very clean boss usually. As long as the tank is positioned against this wall, you're gonna have that big circle pop. You will always see the sidestep here from the Blood DK, and then just kind of usually moving back straight to the middle of it, so you can always have that in that position. From then point on, eventually you're gonna have bubbles on you, which kind of soak up damage that you do want to relieve yourself of with some of these swirlies that are on the ground, because they prevent healing basically, right? Is that correct?
If you don't get rid of the bubbles, then they actually explode at the end of this duration and do AoE damage. So it is tyrannical. It's probably going to do a lot of damage, so you do want to get rid of the bubbles. And we can also see the snail being pulled here on Method Pogchamp's side. It's probably going to get kited by Shelly. He wants to pull it for extra damage and to proc his FOC crit, so that's the one extra thing they can do. But we see Free Marsy is actually, they caught up quite a bit. They're at the same percentage pretty much. They only need to kill the Nagas to get 100%, and they're pretty much the same up now.
Well, it's all because of Method Pogchamp's folly with the attempt at the skip, and this could potentially cost them. And I gotta tell you, I bet Method Pogchamp right now is sweating with how much time they actually lost on that pack. So now Free Marsy, while they were behind quite significantly in the previous boss and the previous trash, etc., they have caught up, and this is now a race.
This is definitely a race coming in from those two teams. They're head-to-head on the boss percentage as well. One thing to note, though, is that Free Marsy still has 5 minutes on their Bloodlust cooldown, while Method Pogchamp does have their Bloodlust cooldown ready, I believe, unless it's a bug with the mage coming in. But if they have the Bloodlust for the last boss, while Free Marsy does not, then it might just mean that Method Pogchamp is going to kill it faster. But right now, it's really a head-to-head race.
All right, so still dealing with this quite quickly. It's 10% behind at this moment for Free Marsy. I'm wondering how much exactly in terms of percent they actually get off of the mobs around the Wrath in a second here. But beyond that, you can see that they're just comfortably nuking this down. Not too much of a problem whatsoever. I mean, for the most part, you're not really getting effects from the affixes on a boss like this, unless, for example, you have a few of the other mobs that they tried to bring up that could have stacked the necrotic.
Yeah, necrotic really shouldn't be a big deal here, but the boss actually does get some sort of enrage at 30%, as we can see him get bigger and reddish. He does quite a bit more damage at the very end, but we still see both of the rest druids being in cat form, just doing the feral weaving, just doing a lot of damage here. And we can see that pretty much at the exact same time they swapped out of cat form to heal the tank and the group back up. But yeah, we can see 1 million DPS coming in from both rest druids. It's actually quite a lot.
Yeah, definitely. It really will. Imagine if one of these teams didn't do it. If one of the healers was lazy, just like, oh, I'm just going to do some healing and that's about it. That would be a significant time loss here, which would be very impactful. And you can see that finally here, Deep Beard will fall on the side of Mythic Pogchamp. They're going to have to head on down. 91% right now for them in terms of trash. Only 1 death. But again, if Free Marsy is able to make up some time down to the bottom, which double rogue might have a bit of a difficult time really making up on single target fights down here. But we'll have to see.
Yeah, Mythic Pogchamp probably does have more single target damage on those single Nagas, but we actually see them. I think they're going to pull 2 of the Nagas together, which is very interesting to see, because they do have casts that are very dangerous. So they have a Lightning Strike that Lightning Blast that targets random players. If it's not interrupted, it does quite a big chunk of damage. It's not fortified, so you might be able to survive it if you use a personal cooldown.
Yeah.
But there's also other abilities that need to be dispelled, like, for example, a fish that needs to be dispelled, and there's this Arcane Bomb that also needs to be dispelled. As we can see, Dr. J just being a fish here, because Elser probably does not have his dispel ready, so he just has to sit through the whole thing.
Yeah, so a bit of a DPS loss, admittedly, while that's happening. I'm going to move on to the next ones. I wonder if they're going to try and tank 2. Looks like Sebs, though, is just sticking there. And, I mean, there is a potential world where he's like, okay, this is skittish. I just want a little bit of threat on this, and then I could pull across. But it looks like they are being patient and safe, realizing that some of those debuffs will cause them some DPS loss. But again, 92% to 95, and Free Marsy is not done just yet.
Yeah, we see this third Naga is actually quite dangerous because it casts an AoE root, and the root does damage for its whole duration. Some classes can get out of the root, like a druid, for example, but some classes cannot, and it does quite a bit of damage, so they probably chose to not pull them together. So in case you're rooted and you get an extra ability on top of it, it might be too much for them to handle.
The question right now is, does Free Marsy have like a little pack of AoE mobs that they can pull with this? Because they are not going to be on trash percentage when this is dead. They're going to have to deal with Wrath. It doesn't look like there's any trash near this right now, which would be so important and impactful for the double rogue on the boss as well.
We can see both of the Residents are actually not with the group right now, so I assume both Residents are going right now, pulling some of the crabs to the boss, so both groups are having the same idea pretty much.
Yeah.
But Mythic Pogchamp pulling the last boss right now, and they do have their Bloodlust ready, as I mentioned earlier, while Free Marsy does not have their Bloodlust. So this big burst coming in at the very start might just make or break it here.
Yeah, this is really important for them. More so than Mythic Pogchamp, Free Marsy needs these small blobs, and they need to do big damage to try and catch up right now. There is 5 seconds on that death timer. Maybe that'll be a difference, but look at this, 18% against 16% right now. If these 2 rogues can really pop off in this moment, Free Marsy might be able to catch up in this boss.
This is actually so close right now, but I'm not sure if they actually get the 4% from those droplets, because they still need 4%, and we see Retrofresh dropping really low, all of them dropping really low, but it might just be it might not be enough percentage from those droplets only.
Yeah, it might not be, as Mythic Pogchamp here completely done. All they need to do is kill Wrath, and then it is done for them. Look, you can even see they actually caught up in a little bit of the percentage there, did Free Marsy, so they are pumping out more damage to be able to try and catch up with this, but I don't think it's going to be enough. It might be too little too late.
This is so close. Okay, they are going to get the 100%, and you also have to think about 1 death coming in from Mythic Pogchamp. These 5 seconds might actually be the difference coming in between those 2 teams.
Might be. 100% on the trash as well here. Can Free Marsy make it up? 9%! Oh my god, Mythic Pogchamp at the moment has fallen behind a little bit. Free Marsy might actually be able to do this in the closing seconds, and it might all come back to that attempted skip from Mythic Pogchamp. This is unbelievable.
This is actually unbelievable. This one skip just might have cost them this whole series.
All the
we
deaths!
see 2 deaths coming in from Subs and Retrofresh, but they do have 2 battle rests, so they can get them back up. But now it's 5 seconds difference for Team Pogchamp. So it's 5% to 6% right now, and Team Pogchamp is 5 seconds seconds ahead.
They can't lose another person. They cannot lose another person. If they do, that 2% might just be the deal breaker on the other side, because now there's 2 deaths on their side as well. That's going to make a little bit of an impact here too, as they're trying their best to keep themselves alive, trying to soak up those bombs, as obviously you've seen people move away to try and even just get the solo soak on it here, but 3% against 5% Nagura.
Bloodless is ready right now. They have to pop their Bloodless. They forgot about it. Subs died, so there's one more death. That means they're 10 seconds behind.
Oh, no.
The boss is about to die, and then Team Pogchamp actually has 10 seconds to kill the boss, and they will still win.
Oh my god, it's going to be so close. Okay, it's dead. How much are they going to be able to get done here? 2% left. They've got 4 seconds to be able to try and bring this down. With 2% left, it's not going to work. 1%, is it going to go? No!
Oh! Free Marsy eke it out in an absolute nail-biter.
That was unbelievably close. Wow.
I need a drink.
I'm pretty sure...
Subs is obviously very revved up right now, but I think the thing that we need to talk about is the fact you probably don't even know how close it is. I'm going to tell you in a second here, but right now, what is going through your mind?
Well, I don't really know. Like, I was actually surprised that we did so well. We had pretty shit practice for that the Eye of Ajara, and we were like, the whole time we were having like 24-minute runs. I was like, oh my fucking god, how are we gonna win this? And then we just and then we won randomly. I was like, wow, I can't believe that happened.
You can tell the emotion in the language there, but the thing is, you don't have good practice. Why do you pick the map? Do you pick the map ultimately because of the execute with the warrior?
It's the rogues as well, dude. All the pulls are like to make the rogues really good, and the warrior just like complemented really well. We had a lot of back and forth originally what we were going to pick. We were going to pick Warlock on that map, and eventually didn't like end up working out. And Retro's a really good warrior player, so it's like it's easy to switch over.
And I think the big thing is, right, Warlock there also going to have that scaling execute. It comes down to that race. It was 1 second, that finish.
What?
Yeah, it was a 1 second finish. Deaths come in on both sides. There's a little bit of struggles with also seeing everything going down with them doing their pull. It came down to 1 second.
Wait, I fucked up so hard.
Okay, we're going to jump out of the interview. We're going to head back to the desk, but you can hear it here. 1 second, just realizing how close that finish really was, guys.
That was certainly a cheeky interview. Nagura, I think at this point, you and Trekkie may actually